Hello. If you're watching this back on the playback, hi, I'm Sarah, and this is a place for people who are deconstructing their faith, questioning their faith, and on these lives, I just read the comments and take questions, and we have kind of a discussion that way. So there should be a way for you to some setting on the bottom where you can see the comments, so it'll make a little more sense. Hi, Felix. Dr. Joe, hello. Hi, hi. Hey, Jordan. Well, for anyone who's new, I'm Sarah, hi, and this is a place for people who are deconstructing, questioning their faith, and we just kind of chat. So, yeah, pretty chill vibe in here. Usually I make it about 4 minutes before we have to restrict the comments a little bit. So we'll see. Oh, that's awesome. I'm glad you got to go, John. That's cool. I'm really happy for you. Hi, Objective. I hope you're having a good evening too. Hey, Walt. Happy Tuesday. Oh, big sigh, Rubes. Oh, well, thanks, Chip. I appreciate you stopping by. Definitely. I hope you get a good night's sleep. None. Hi, Angie. Also, if you come here for the cute pets, I have Rube sitting, how do I flip this? Ruby sitting with me tonight. So there's Ruby. Oops. Ugh. I didn't like that. Did you know that dietary restriction induces meiotic delays in stem cells? Or mitotic delays? I mean, I guess I wouldn't be surprised. Hi, Vinny. Buongiorno. Oh, well, I'm glad you're here, Objective. Objective says, I found Justin's channel recently and enjoy the community. Yeah, I can't recommend him enough. He really, really knows his stuff. So it's a great community there too. Let's see, will I be back on Thursday? Maybe Thursday. I'll be back on Thursday. For anyone who's new, hey, I'm Sarah, and this is a place for people who are deconstructing their faith or questioning their faith. And yeah, just kind of a place to chat and ask questions. The prompt that I have today is about not deserving hell. Are you Christian? I used to be, and now I am an agnostic atheist. Oh, hello from Greece. Hi. Well, Objective, have you tried to get get in the queue to debate Justin? Hey, Em. LAV says, one answer I can never get clear on is hell. No one can clearly describe it. And I mean, to be fair, I think the Bible's pretty contradictory and confusing about it. Hi, John. Oh, well, I hope you have a good concert, Jordan. Good morning. JMR says, I watched a TikTok you made the other day and you said you were going to get a little snarky. It was a response video. Then your entire video was so nice and calming. I mean, for me, that was snarky. Yeah, Jason, we have people from all around the globe in here, so it is morning somewhere. Hi, K2. Respectfully snarky. Yes, exactly. All right. I think we're at the point where we're going to do followers only for our comments. Oh, from Lagos. Wow. And I feel like I have to say this just to if you are familiar with YouTube, you know this already, but when it says subscribers, that just means followers. You don't have to pay any money. Any theme tonight? I think hell, like that you don't deserve hell. We're gonna do that tonight. Ooh, let me scoot this a little closer. Oh, that's better. Well, thanks, John. I appreciate it. Frankie, you know, I have not read the Quran, but I came out of an Abrahamic religion and I'm not super eager to get into a different one. Hey, Elijah. Oh, John, thank you so much for the super chat. I really appreciate that. Um, Objective says, hell is a wild theology, but heaven is just as cringe. Hi, Herb. Oh, can you hear Ruby? Yeah, that was her. Are there any other religion scriptures you read? So, not with any regularity. Just I've read bits and pieces, but nowhere near to the depth that I read and studied the Bible. Oh, I'm so glad that it's helping, John, really. And yeah, if you need anything, I'm easier to get a hold of on TikTok. So, Frankie, I really don't have any compelling reason to think that the God described in the Quran is real. John says, I'm not entirely convinced heaven is better. What if God is just lying? Well, and I mean, the theology of heaven has its own problems too, then, it completely contradicts the idea of free will and whether or not we need it. Oh, Jinx. Okay, I've seen your comments. That name sounds familiar. If you need any resources or other kind of places to connect, send me a DM. I can send you some information. I'm so sorry for your loss, Jordan. Supernatural. No, I was a Protestant, not a Catholic. Explaining outer space 1400 years ago. To my knowledge, Frankie, the Quran doesn't give you like the math of the Big Bang. I know us. Did the fear of hell keep you from deconverting at all for any length of time? You know, actually, it was the opposite. The theology of hell is kind of what started the process for me. JS says, I wonder what the rationale about heaven being perfect. Um, I mean, generally, it comes from the idea of like God is perfect and you're with God. I think there's also some element of just reward, like something to look forward to. I think it's a very attractive idea that there's no more sorrow, no more pain, that kind of thing. Um, yeah, I don't know where the concept of hell first originated. Um, so maybe, I don't know. I do, legend. Like a really crispy white is probably like white wine, probably be my favorite. John says the greatest hell contradiction I found was how it was supposed to be a place of always dying, never dead, and yet in the end it says death will be swallowed up in the supposed lake of fire. I mean, there's definitely contradictions in the way that that is described. I think there are several places where it does sound like you're just perishing and that's it. And then other times where it sounds like, no, this is an eternal punishment or eternal suffering. Yeah. Legend, I just answered your question. Yeah, it's definitely like the carrot and the stick for sure. Frankie, just because the Quran says the universe is expanding, that's not the same thing as saying like it knew about the Big Bang. Sorry, it would have to be much more specific. Yeah, Ruzel, when you think about heaven for more than a few minutes, I agree, it ceases to make a lot of sense. And I think that, yeah, using it as a carrot does work best if you don't deeply think about it. That's interesting, Flip. Jordan says, what is the meaning of life? So, I mean, my first answer is we find our own meaning. I don't think there is any like objective meaning. But my favorite answer to that is a Kurt Vonnegut quote. Um, the purpose of life, no matter who is in charge of it, is to love whoever is around to be loved. And I like that. Yeah. John says, the greatest pain I suffered was how my supposed good father would not listen to the cries of his child. When my children would cry for me, I came running no matter what. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are so many ways that God is not a good father. You know, a good parent doesn't ignore their children. Frankie, no one is scared that you that's just not the purpose of this particular live. Um it it's just that's just not the goal here. Well, legend, yeah, that'll do it. Supernatural says, what if the God of the Bible is actually the devil? Something to think about. No one knows. I don't even want to find out. I mean, it's not too difficult to cast him as a villain, for sure. If anyone wonders why it sucks to be a woman on the internet, this is why. No, Ethan, I haven't. Do you celebrate Christian holidays like Easter or Christmas? I do, but only in like a secular way. Eric says, it shows a lack of creativity that Christianity only has 2 afterlives. You should get at least 4 or 5. I do think that's really interesting and frustrating that there's only 2 options, and that's all there ever could be. Yeah, John says, one of the biggest problems with heaven is that if you want your children or maybe your parents to go to heaven, then how can you be happy if they end up in hell? Yeah, so when I ask Christians about this, I often get some variation of, well, God just erases your memories. You don't remember them. And I find that to be a horrifying answer. Jordan asks, how can I trust my own experiences with God when others have had similar experiences with different faiths? Yeah, that is, YouTube, do you go on men's lives and comment about their appearances? Patsy says, I hate to say it, but the thought has crossed my mind that the God of the Bible and Satan were possibly one and the same. I mean, I think it's an interesting way to think about it, like two sides of the same coin kind of thing. Hi, Jim. Spencer says, I grew up culturally Christian but never went to church. I'm amazed how the idea of hell had such a hold on me, even though I never went to church or studied the Bible. So scary yet so gripping. Yeah, I mean, especially like the evangelical idea of hell is literally what is the most terrifying thing you can imagine, right? Suffering infinitely. There's literally nothing worse. So, of course, yeah, that's terrifying. Hey, Minnie. Yeah, the idea of babies going to heaven, it's pretty rare that you would find a Christian who says that they don't. You might, but I think it's interesting that the idea is so abhorrent. I think most Christians find a way, for babies to go to heaven. Legend, if you want me to go deeper into the Bible texts, I actually have a whole playlist doing that on my page with Justin from Deconstruction Zone. What is this channel about? Hi, this is for people who are leaving their faith or deconstructing their faith and want a place to have community and to talk about it and meet people and ask questions. Do you believe in a higher power? I don't think so. I mean, I'm open to the possibility because I don't think there even is a way to demonstrate that there's not, right? I can't prove that false. So I'm open to the possibility that there is one, but I don't have any evidence that there is. Oh, that's interesting, John. John says, I think Augustine and Aquinas believed that babies go to limbo, which is basically purgatory forever. It was devastating for families. The Catholic Church had to apologize about it. What are you passionate about? Science, physiology, exercise in particular, hiking, mountains, beaches, good stuff. What did you believe in before? I was a Protestant Christian. I think that might have been someone else, John. How has your community changed since leaving faith? So I basically lost all of the friends that I had at the church I was going to. I've had to create a whole new community. I have, but it's a totally different community now. I seem like I do a lot of meditation and yoga. I do some yoga, a little, like a couple times a month. So, oh, no worries, John. Oh, Eric says Augustine went further than that, actually. He maintained that babies go to hell full stop. I mean, on one hand, that's obviously horrifying. On the other hand, I do think it's more internally consistent. Oh. So for people asking why I don't believe anymore, I have an FAQ playlist. Um, and I have a whole video that kind of gives that backstory. Yeah, Tangled, the idea that scripture is perfect and inerrant is really hard to defend when it's been revised and changed. And I think I used to believe that. I used to believe that it was perfect. And I think part of that is believing it first and then looking at evidence later. And that means you look at evidence through a biased lens. Unashamed says, can you talk about what helped you shake the fear of hell? Yeah, so um, for me, it was really like when I came to a clear point that I just stopped believing that God was real. And so for me, those two beliefs were so linked that when I stopped believing in God, I stopped believing in hell. It's those two concepts were hand in hand. Nora says, why do you think it is when people leave a religion, they generally lose all their friends that are still a part of it? Because you're losing the main thing you have in common, and when your group is centered around a belief, it's really hard to stay in that group if you no longer share that belief. So much of the time you spend together, the events and the rituals, all are centered around this belief. And if you don't share that, and it's exclusion kind of naturally follows, unfortunately. Thanks, Objective. Well, welcome, Olive. I'm glad you're here. Larry says, where did everything come from if there is no God? I mean, probably the same place that a God would come from, Why does a God, if you believe a God exists, why does a God exist instead of nothing? It's the same question, really. Hey, Jay, Terry. Yeah, I don't believe that Jesus is God or the Son of God. It's an interesting question. Cute says, do you communicate with your family using religious language or concepts to try to accommodate their point of view? Yeah, I'm definitely, I speak that language very fluently. And so I'm able to converse in a way that makes sense to both of us. Yeah, you're welcome, Deborah. Good. I'm glad it's calming, Captain. That's definitely the vibe we're going for here. Jordan asks, how did God allow Satan's rebellion? Why did he tolerate his rebellion in heaven? Yeah, I mean, and honestly, why create Satan in the first place, knowing what was going to happen? It just doesn't really make any sense. And why give him any power? Why cast him down to earth and let him be the prince of this world, roaming the earth? Like, that seems like a weird choice. Hey, dyslexia. Did I say that out loud already? Have a good night, Jay. Oh, yeah. John says, on TikTok, someone said they have a PhD, but they didn't want to talk about their dissertation. What was yours on? Yeah, that was really funny. That there was a guy claiming that he had a PhD, but he said his PhD was in science, but then he clarified to biology. And I asked what his PhD was in, or what his dissertation was on, and he did not want to expand. My dissertation was looking at the role of a specific inflammatory marker on the development of cancer-related fatigue, and then treating that inflammatory marker with a specific flavonoid. So to see if reducing that inflammation could help reduce some of the negative symptoms of chemotherapy. Johnny says, what scares me the most isn't a heaven or hell. It's how we have to leave the ones we love. Yeah, that is so difficult. I have no easy answers for that. And it seems terribly unfair. Hey, Jay, I was raised in a Presbyterian church, but I was part of a couple different churches, so I just say Protestant. Oh, Tangled says the pastors in India blackmail people saying to get bad luck, no heaven if they don't pay 10%. So it varies hugely from church to church how they handle that. You'll probably get stories from different ends of the spectrum. In the LDS church, I think they pretty closely tie the tithing to getting into heaven. There are some denominations where like it's encouraged but not that emphasized, and some denominations where they want to see your tax returns. I think it just varies really widely. ATP replenishment in our subconscious. I mean, we certainly need the ATP. Yeah, John. I mean, your dissertation is incredibly narrow, which is why I was very suspicious when someone just said biology. Like, okay. Oh, Noah says, and how is the flavonoid administered? Asking for my patients, or at least if there was a benefit. So, my work was all in mice, and it was incorporated into their diet. I can tell you, though, that I was also part of a human trial, and it it was really beneficial in the mice and way less beneficial in the humans. So there weren't any side effects. It didn't hurt anything, but I don't think it will make a big difference. The hope was that it would also increase mitochondrial biogenesis to increase that kind of feeling of energy. And that's demonstrated in mouse models, less so in human. Yancy says, how do you deal with loneliness? I think part of the difficulty of losing your community is now you have to go join a new one. And it does mean you have to put yourself out there. And, depending on your amount of social anxiety, that can genuinely be a huge barrier. I do find though that like online communities are really helpful. It's not quite the same as in person, but it is helpful. It does help. Oh yeah, thank you, Herb, for the Herb. Sorry, my American way of reading that word. For the super chat, and says if I could tip the mods, I would. They have a busy time during these streams. Yes, they do. Applause for my moderators. It really, really helps. Mitochondrial worker beast. I like that. Hey, Sebastian, thank you so much. Oh, Dyslexia says, you may not believe this, but my particular cluster migraine variant is part of a case study. I'm so sorry that you have a cluster migraines. Those are the worst. Yeah, John, you're very welcome to reach out to me on TikTok for sure. Do you believe concepts like universal consciousness or karma have validity? I don't have any evidence of universal consciousness. I can't rule it out. I mean, certainly things in the natural world seem to be connected, but I don't know about universal consciousness. Oh, Unashamed, thank you so much for the super chat. I really appreciate it. Yeah, and with karma, it does seem to sort of be natural consequences. I don't believe in like a supernatural force, but I do think that's just how life ends up working, you know? Yeah, volunteering is a great way to meet new people and get into a new community. Do you think humans are evolving relatively quickly? No, I think we're pretty slow at it, actually. I think, we have such a long time from generation to generation. It's not like we have a new generation every year. You have a new generation every 20 years or 25 years. So, I mean, yeah, relatively speaking, it's slow. Noah, though, actually, several members of my family really do have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Yeah, Eric, gravity would be one way. Hi, Dave. Yeah, I mean, not a huge difference, Nora. We have fewer and fewer people are getting their wisdom teeth. More people are developing tolerance to lactose. What about our moral evolution? Slavery was widely accepted a few generations back. Yeah, now that does seem to be recently fast. I don't know how to phrase that. You know, it seemed to be very, very slow for a really long period of time. And then I think as humans became more connected and less isolated, and we got to hear different points of view and learn from different people, our empathy really increased. If you take something like um, the perception of gay marriage in the US, from like the 70s and 80s to the early 2000s, that was a very quick evolution, relatively speaking. I'm now in the US, I don't know what's happening, but um, yeah, it's been almost like an exponential rate of change. Hi, Joe. Yeah, I mean, evolution wouldn't quite be the term, but I think we can use it and kind of know what we mean. Oh, that's interesting, Noah. Um, your adrenal gland sits on your kidney. You believe that you are God? No. A moral accumulation. That's a nice way to put it. Jordan says, how did Jesus' death and resurrection prove his victory over sin and death? Yeah, it really didn't. Um, Not a lot actually changed. Jesus Christ. I don't know. I don't know why. I don't get it. Dan says his victory, not yours. Okay. Was Jesus previously ruled by death and sin? Hi. Michael says, so you believe Jesus was real, just not the Son of God, right? I think so. I think that's reasonable. Yeah, asking why Jesus needs worship, I think, is a really important question. JS says the crucifixion is a big question I have. Like, what changed? I mean, if you ask a Protestant, if you ask an evangelical, they will say basically it allows you to go to heaven if you believe in it. But there's never a clear answer of what happened to people before Jesus. If you ask 10 Christians, they will give you 10 different answers on that. Hi, Grim. Yeah, something demanding worship isn't worthy of worship. Dave says it would make sense Jesus was real, but no supernatural stuff. Like, yeah, I could see that. I mean, I think you could make a reasonable case for that. Yeah, Superman never demanded worship. I will find you the bunny. um, what are your thoughts on in how many instances in the Old Testament the Israelites were directed to utterly destroy the inhabitants of the land? I mean, I can give you the Christian answer. I don't think it's a good answer. I mean, I think it more demonstrates that the God that they were worshiping was this fallible war God rather than this perfect loving God. So, Raphael, I'm actually not trying to prove anything either way. This live is not aimed at Christians. This is a live for people who are deconstructing their faith and just want support. So I'm not out here to get you. Yeah, exactly. Eric says if salvation was possible for pre-Columbian Americans, for example, Christianity is redundant. If it wasn't, though, then most of humanity is doomed due to simple bad luck and ignorance. Right. It puts Christians, I think, in a kind of impossible situation. What to do with people who have never heard. And it's interesting how little we used to talk about that. What, Joe? Oh, I guess I don't remember. Hi, Michelle. Oh, yeah, I do remember that now. That's right. Oh, Kirby says, are you sure Christianity doesn't happen again on another planet? Well, no. I mean, I am not sure. Douglas says, do you think there's any value in faith? I don't understand why belief with no evidence has value, but there's something I may be missing. Seems to give people confidence or peace or something. Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on what we mean when we say faith, because people use it in several different ways. Um, I mean, I do think that believing that you are part of something greater than yourself, believing that there is a God who is taking care of you can be reassuring. For some people, they really need the strict moral framework. Yeah, so, it can be beneficial. I don't think it's required, though. Yeah, Pezzo. Unfortunately, I think those stories serve to desensitize Christians to violence, and reduce the value of life. Hi, Autumn. Hey, TNC. John says, I think religion is a good coping mechanism that a lot of people need, but I also think it's a problem um, if you need it. Yeah. I don't think religion is inherently bad. Um, I just think it's very powerful. So I think it can do really good things. And it also, because it's very powerful, it can do really bad things too. Hi, Randy. That's interesting. Eric says fatalism is the rational endpoint of Christianity. If God turns everything to the good, then it doesn't actually matter what happens. Well, I don't know. I need to think about that for a second. I don't know if Christians really believe that in a sense. Like so many Christians, I think that everything will turn out well for his followers, but that there's also a huge subset of people that will um, be suffering for eternity. So I don't know what to do with that. Doug, what? Blasphemy. A valid question. Kirby says, why would a creator tell them to cut off a part of their body to signal their allegiance? Yeah, I don't have a good answer for that. God focused, I left because I just genuinely stopped believing that it was true. Douglas says, I'm struggling with if, when, and how much I should challenge the faith of people I care about. Religion can cause a lot of harm, but I'm trying to see the value it brings to their lives. My approach is I don't ever try to change someone's belief. I'm always happy to have conversations with friends and family if they bring it up. But yeah, deconstruction is such a jarring painful, hard process that I'm not eager to shove someone into that. I do think it ends up a net positive, but it's complicated. There are downsides, you know, and so, and plus I think for something like a religious belief, I'm not going to logically talk someone out of it. None of us really change our minds about religion easily, right? We have to kind of, we wait until we're really ready. Yeah. Grimm says, allegiance to a tyrant is never admirable. Well said. Yeah. Have you found a new belief? Not a new religious one, no. Hi, Kingdom. I have an FAQ playlist that gives you my whole backstory, but the short of it is I just stopped believing it was true. Well, fair enough, T. Alrighty, friends. It is getting late. I am working on getting to bed earlier, but oh my gosh, that is my weakness. I never go to bed early. But thank you guys so much for hanging out and for such a lovely conversation. I let's see. I have some resources in my bio. Please come find me on TikTok if you use TikTok. I have a lot more content over there, and you can get a hold of me over there. And I will be back on YouTube on Thursday. All right. I hope you guys have a wonderful night. And again, thanks for coming. Oh, and yes, September 21st. Mark your calendars. I will be on the Atheist Experience.